الحمد لله رب العالمين ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله ولي الصالحين ونشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمدا عبد الله ورسوله الأمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله الطاهرين وصحبه الطيبين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين وبعد. Of poetry which come to mind again at this moment. These lines of poetry come to mind because they are a very apt representation of the reason why we come together. عرفت الشر لا للشر لكن لتوقيه ومن لا يعرف الشر من الخير يقع فيه. One would wish that everything in life is rosy and nice, everything is friendly, everything is optimistic. But the reality of life is somewhat different, starkly different from that. In this life you get good, you get bad as well. We as a community have to contend with all issues that arise, anything that threatens the fabric of our society. Therefore, if it happens at times that we use adjectives such as bad and evil, it is not to denigrate, to humiliate, or to judge any particular person, but rather an idea. For the most part of its history, this society was not aware of the Shia and Tashayyu' and Shiasm. It became aware of it. There are those who wish that we must only focus upon what is good, only focus upon what is common between both of us, only focus upon those issues where we can find common ground between ourselves and the Shia and thereby work towards a kind of a unity in order to achieve the greater purposes of this Ummah. As admirable as such sentiments may be, they are not in the interest of a community, neither in the long term nor in the short term. Had Shiasm come purely as an element that arose in the society without any pretensions and without any intentions of spreading its wings beyond what it already is, one could have possibly gone that route, but that is not the case. We find that it is a phenomenon that invites towards itself, that passes itself off as the original and uncorrupted form of Islam, which by its very nature, a claim of this nature, by its very nature, makes certain statements and judgments about ourselves and our form of Islam. Therefore we have come together. We have come together to learn about those aspects of Shiasm which we recognize as not good. Call it bad, call it evil, call it whatever you wish. But the fact of the matter is that there are certain things which are not in the interest of this particular society. We have to look at them. None of those things are intended as a judgment on particular persons. I'm 100% certain that you find people born as Shia in other parts of the world, perhaps even in this part of the world, who are excellent individuals. No judgment upon them. They might be very, very good persons in their own right. But we as a community are threatened. And therefore we say together with the poet, Araftu shar, I'm here to learn about not good things, about bad things. La li shar, not in order to engage thereafter in something that is evil. Not in order to engage in violence. Not in order to engage in condemnation. Not in order to attack persons. But in order to safeguard this particular society, lakin li tawaqqihi. I have to know about these bad things. As uncomfortable as they are, I have to become aware of them in order to avoid them. Because وَمَنْ لَا يَعْرِفِ الشَّرَّ مِنَ الْخَيْرِ, if you are unable to distinguish between a good idea and a bad idea, then you're going to find yourself very soon falling into that evil. Therefore, we come together week after week in order to learn further about it. With that as introduction, I proceed. This week, inshallah, we will go on a walk through history, the history of Shiasm, from its early days to as far as our 1 hour will allow us. To the Shia, the history of Shiasm goes hand in hand with the history of Islam. The day Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam came with a message of Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq, they believed that together with the seed of Islam, the seed of Tashayyu' was planted at one and the same time. We obviously differ. We believe that there was one Islam. In this deen of ours, there is no internal divisions. We believe that there is going to be no partisanship. There is not an Islam and a different form of Islam. Because Allah Ta'ala made it clear, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ فَرَّقُوا دِينَهُمْ وَكَانُوا شِيَعًا لَسْتَ مِنْهُمْ فِي شَيْءٍ. Those who split their deen up into various different parties and groupings, you, O Muhammad, have nothing to do with them. This deen is one deen. So, for anyone to say that the seed of Shiasm was planted together with the seed of Islam is going in direct violation of that particular ayah. Whatever might have been the point of eventual divergence to the Shia becomes very apparent upon the demise of Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What happens at that moment is that the issue of leadership becomes prominent, becomes an issue of discussion. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is no longer amongst us. What happens next? While he was alive, he was the leader. With him having departed, where does leadership devolve? Upon whose shoulders does it go? The Ansar gathered together upon receipt of the news of the demise of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam at a place called Saqifa Bani Sa'ida. A Saqifa is what we would call in Afrikaans a Fadak. It's a kind of a roof structure under which you sit and they get together and discuss. Not the wall structures, it's just a few poles with a roof, and there they used to sit. They get together at Saqifa Bani Sa'ida and they start discussing what happens, who becomes the leader after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and various ideas get thrown up. They said that this is our city. We were the inhabitants of the city before they came. Now Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is no longer amongst us, so one of us has to take over. Sayyidina Abu Bakr and Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu anhuma come to hear about what is happening in Saqifa Bani Sa'ida, and they realize the danger of what is happening there. If this matter of leadership is to be discussed by anyone and everyone, anyone chooses any leader and just go about doing things as they want to, this ummah, whose precarious unity was forged over 23 years, it runs the danger of being divided amongst themselves. So immediately they set out for the Saqifa. They go there and they engage in discussion with the Ansar. And they make it clear to the Ansar on the strength of various arguments from the Quran, from the Hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that leadership in this ummah was intended to remain within this particular group of the Muhajirin, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, Al-a'immatu min Quraysh. Various different arguments are brought up from this side, from that side. Eventually one of the Ansar, Sayyidina Usayd ibn Hudayr, comes forward and says, give your hand and we shall make bay'ah upon your hand. Sayyidina Umar at that moment has two men on his two sides. He says, I offer you one of two men. On my right hand here is Abu Bakr. On my left hand here is Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah. These two men, choose any of them and they will be a good leader. They eventually decide to give the bay'ah to Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu. Now, at that moment, this is a very, very sensitive moment that we can go on discussing at length. I've given you the broad outlines. The Ansar all come together, the Muhajirin, whoever are they, all of them place their hands in the hands of Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu. This is our new leader. Not long thereafter, they go into the masjid. And publicly the announcement is made, we've elected Abu Bakr as our Khalifa, as a successor of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Everyone come, give your bay'ah to the new Khalifa. In the house of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam at that moment, Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib and other members of the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam are preparing his body for burial, washing, preparing it for burial. They were not aware of what is happening in Saqifa. They come out and they ask, what has happened? Because they hear the takbir in the masjid. They are told that bay'ah has been given to Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu. They feel somewhat slighted. They feel somewhat slighted, somewhat hard done by. Why? Because they were not consulted. They were not part of the process. As for giving the bay'ah, they too give their bay'ah to Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu. All that they felt was, we should have been consulted as well. But after hearing the way that things came about, it came about not by design. It's because one party was pulling the one side and another party was perhaps pulling the other way, this particular situation had to be resolved. It was resolved by Muhajirin and Ansar together deciding to give their bay'ah to Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu. Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib also at that moment gives his bay'ah 6 months later, because some people were still speaking. Perhaps Ali is not happy. Perhaps Ali is not happy. Perhaps he has certain designs in the Khilafah himself. Therefore 6 months later, after the demise of Sayyidah Fatima radiyallahu anha, he sends a message to Abu Bakr that tomorrow publicly in the masjid, we have an appointment. I want to publicly make clear to each and everyone that I have no tiff with you as a Khalifa. I accept you as a Khalifa. Just as Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam was happy to have you lead us in Salah in his final days, we are happy to have you as our Khalifa in leading us in this dunya. So the next day publicly in the masjid he stands up, delivers a khutbah in which he declares his allegiance to Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu, gives his bay'ah. As we saw last week, he goes on thereafter to do what? He goes on to name his sons after Abu Bakr, Umar and Uthman radiyallahu anhum. He goes on to give his daughter in marriage to Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu anhu. This is the kind of relationship that he had with the rest of the Sahaba radiyallahu anhum. This is our version of the history. Broad lines, broad outlines. This is our version of the history. There is another version. The other version I might have stated in previous lectures here. The other version goes that when Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu and the rest of the Ahlul Bayt were sitting in the house, they refused to come out to give the bay'ah to Abu Bakr. Therefore they were attacked in that home. They were attacked by Umar sending Khalid ibn al-Walid and others to gather firewood around the house and burn down that house if they do not come out. And Ali is inside. And Fatima is inside. And the little Hasan and Hussein, they are all inside that house. And eventually Umar storms open the door with Fatima standing behind the door. Slams her against the wall to the extent that she loses her unborn child. Ali is grabbed around his neck, dragged out in the greatest of humiliation and forced to give bay'ah. This is also a version of history. This particular version of history definitely does not harmonize with what we know of the character of Asadullah al-Ghalib, Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu. We continue. Something else takes place more or less at this time. What also takes place is that Sayyidah Fatima radiyallahu anha comes to Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu. She comes to him and says, I ask from you my inheritance from my father. Father's Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He has passed away. She comes to Abu Bakr and asks him my inheritance from my father. He does not give her that inheritance. What was that inheritance? It was some land that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam possessed in a place called Fadak near Khaybar, a garden in Fadak. That she says, this is my inheritance from my father. He does not give it to her. From the Shia side, this is Abu Bakr usurping, unrightfully appropriating the property of Sayyidah Fatima radiyallahu anha and being guilty of injustice upon her. But let's look at it in a wider sense. Who are the heirs of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Only his daughter? What about the fact he has an uncle as well? What about the fact that he leaves several wives? They are also part and parcel of the heirs. Even they are denied a share in the inheritance of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And why are they denied a share in the inheritance of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself said that we the Anbiya, we do not leave anything to heirs to inherit. Ma tarakna sadaqah. Whatever we leave behind is sadaqah. Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu therefore tells Sayyidah Fatima radiyallahu anha, Wallahi laqarabatu Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam ahabbu ilayya an asila min qarabati. To keep ties with the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is more beloved to my heart than to keep ties even with my own family. But one thing stands in my way of doing what you ask. لكنني سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول نحن معاشر الأنبياء لا نورث ما تركنا صدقة. We, the Anbiya, we do not leave any inheritance behind. Whatever we leave behind is sadaqah. If Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was that evil person who usurped the inheritance of Fatima, then we have to consider several other things. We have to consider the fact that he usurped his own daughter's inheritance as well. We also have to consider something else. That something else is, did anyone ever ask themselves that when he appropriated it, took it for himself, stole it, what did he do with it thereafter? Look at history and what does it say? He dealt with it exactly as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to deal with it. All those who used to benefit from it in the lifetime of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam continued benefiting from it after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Is this what a usurper does? Is this what a person does who does an injustice to the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Giving them more than everyone. When the spoils of war came into Medina, and the coffers of the state are full, Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu had to decide how is this to be distributed in the community of Medina. Right at the top he says, who's going to get most? He said, everyone's not going to get equal. Umar's idea was everyone must get the same. Sayyidina Abu Bakr said, no, I'm going to give to people in order of precedence. First of all, right at the top, who will get the most? The family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Little Hasan and Hussein, 6 and 7 years old. They get the same share as the people of Badr. Those people who fought at Badr, who are next in line after the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These two little ones, barely able to walk on their own, 6 and 7 years old. So much did he love them that he gave them exactly the same share as the Sahaba of Badr who fought for Islam. This is not the act of a person who usurps, who is unjust, who expropriates property unrightfully. This is the act of a person who loves very dearly the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This place of Fadak thereafter, Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu anhu becomes the Khalifa, and he deals with it exactly as Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu used to deal with it. What does he do? Exactly those same people who used to benefit in the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam continue to benefit, but it's administered by the Khalifa himself. One day, Sayyidina Abbas and Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib, they come to him and they ask him, please, we ask you to hand over the sadaqah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to us. Hand it over to us. We want to administer it. He says, I will give it to you on one condition. What's that one condition? The one condition is that you administer it exactly as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to administer it. Give those people from it who used to get in his lifetime. If you do it like that, I'll give it to you. If you cannot do it, leave it. I will do it myself. This is again not the actions of a person who is unjust. Now this seems to be a very inane story. What's so wonderful about it? The reason why it needs to be told is because it's been distorted completely beyond recognition by the Shia. This is Abu Bakr the usurper, Abu Bakr the oppressor, taking away the last little bit of the daughter of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then it goes beyond that. It says that Abu Bakr forged, lied, created, fabricated a hadith just so that he can take away the inheritance of Fatima. Which hadith? They say this hadith, Nahnu ma'ashir al-anbiya. The hadith that says we the anbiya, we do not leave any inheritance. Is this a forgery? The Shia tells you very clearly this is a forgery. Why? We ask them why. They say, well, it goes against the Quran. Where does it go against the Quran? They tell you, well, وَوَرِثَ سُلَيْمَانُ دَاوُودَ. The Quran mentions there that the Anbiya can inherit. They leave an inheritance behind them. Dawood died and who was his heir? His heir was Sulaiman. This ayah says the Anbiya can inherit from one another. Your hadith says the Anbiya cannot or do not leave any inheritance behind. We say that, look at that hadith. What did Sulaiman inherit from Dawood? What was it that he inherited from Dawood? Do you think it was money or land or anything like that? It was ilm. It was nubuwwah given by Allah Ta'ala. It was the kingdom. Dawood had many other sons. Sulaiman was not his own son. If this was a matter of worldly inheritance, what is the sense of Allah Ta'ala telling us that Dawood's heir was Sulaiman? All Sulaiman's property went to Dawood. It was not that. It was that ilm, that nubuwwah and that mulk, that kingdom that Allah Ta'ala had given them. There is no conflict, no contradiction between the ayah on the one hand and the hadith on the other. This particular hadith is narrated by who? Not only by the Ahlus Sunnah. If this is the forgery of Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu, how come in the books of the Shia themselves, there is a book called Al-Ahadith Al-Arba'un, written by who? Written by Imam Khomeini. In that particular book, he narrates from Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq a longish hadith about the fadila of ilm, about the virtues of ilm. And in that hadith, the same thing comes. That we, the Anbiya, do not leave any inheritance behind. We leave behind only one thing, and that is ilm. فَمَنْ أَخَذَهُ أَخَذَ بِحَظٍ وَافِرٍ. If Abu Bakr is the fabricator, is the forger, is the liar of this hadith, how come Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq is saying exactly the same thing? The hadith is no forgery. The Sahaba radiyallahu anhum dealt with the greatest of love, the greatest of care, the greatest of mercy to the Ahlul Bayt radiyallahu anhum ajma'een. Therefore you would find a person like Sayyidina Ali naming his sons after them after all. There was no taqiyya. It was only an affirmation of the good relationship that existed between the Sahaba on the one hand and Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib on the other. Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiyallahu anhu dies. Sayyidina Umar becomes the Khalifa. We've already spoken about the marriage of Sayyidina Umar to the daughter of Sayyidina Ali. Then, there are two campaigns carrying on. Two great campaigns of jihad. One in Persia, one in Syria. The Persian campaign is not going very well. The Persian campaign is not making headway. Sayyidina Ali calls together his counselors. Chief counselor was who? Ali ibn Abi Talib. Sayyidina Umar calls them together. His chief counselor is Ali ibn Abi Talib. Your chief counselor is not your enemy. Your chief counselor is your close friend. He calls them together and asks them that, I have a suggestion. I want to go personally to the Persian front. I want to go and join the jihad in Persia myself. You are my counselors, tell me what should I do. Sayyidina Ali tells me, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, don't go yourself. If you go, the Persians will be incited to greater fervor because they will recognize that the leader of the Arabs is here. And they will fight. They will fight with great determination. If they manage to kill you, it will be very bad for this ummah. Rather you stay here, let the mujahideen go, and they will fight. This is a friend giving advice to a friend. This is not a person giving advice to someone who he believes to be in the lowest pits of hell. This is what we believe the Sahaba radiyallahu anhu to have been like. What were they like? Ikhwanan ala sururim mutaqabilin. They were brothers of one another, dearly loved one another. And if in the course of affairs sometimes it happens that someone has a difference of opinion with another, they were those people who could find it in their hearts to overlook their differences. There are others, however, who could not. And who till the end of time will continue bringing up imagined issues of distrust between them. Eventually the Khilafah goes to Sayyidina Uthman radiyallahu anhu. Now, during the Khilafah of Sayyidina Uthman, there are certain very, very important points which I will leave for a later date to be discussed individually. In very, very broad terms, what happens here is that there is, in the cities, in the various outlying cities, there are people who are dissatisfied with the way that Sayyidina Uthman radiyallahu anhu is running the state. Who are those people? They are not Sahaba. Those are people wat gister Muslim geword het, who've got a better idea what Islam should be like, who want to tell the Sahaba radiyallahu anhu how they must go about doing things. Those people, to cut the long story very short, and the long story will come, we're not avoiding anything. To cut the long story very short, eventually march upon Medina and murder Sayyidina Uthman in his very own house. To understand what Medina was like in those days, to understand what happens when rebels march in, slaughter the Khalifa while he's sitting and reading the Quran, to understand what that was all about, we'll need a whole lecture. For now, we suffice to say that the moment the blood of the Khalifa was shed, this ummah split apart. And from that moment till the very present day, it has never come together again. Because of the holy blood of Sayyidina Uthman radiyallahu anhu that was shed on that day. What happens? The ummah splits. Politically they have split apart. Why? Because in Syria there is Muawiya, the governor of Syria. And he is the cousin of Uthman. In Medina there is Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib, was elected as the next Khalifa. What does he do thereafter? He calls for all the governors to send in their bay'ah. He starts dismissing this one, he starts appointing the other. He's the new Khalifa. He has to work with people that he can work along with. From Syria, Muawiya sends a message, I am not submitting. I'm not giving up my post until the blood of my cousin Uthman is avenged. My cousin Uthman cannot be killed in cold blood and his murderers left free to go about doing as they want to. I will submit, but this is my condition. Who is right, who is wrong? Seen from one angle, the one is right. Seen from another angle, the other one has a point as well. But the more important thing is, who is right? The Khalifa is the rightful one. He is the central authority. Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib is the rightful one. He has the command. He is the one to decide. However, we need to understand where the other side is coming from. Are they opposed to Ali's Khilafah just because they don't like him? No, they have a reason, and a very, very valid reason as well. The blood of Uthman is not yet cold, and his murderers are running about. Where are his murderers to be found? The supporters of his murderers are within the army of Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu. What do you do now? The Sahaba radiyallahu anhum find themselves in a situation that they never had to face before. Before this day, things were clear cut. Muslim was Muslim, Kafir was Kafir. Jihad was an easy matter. It was easy to decide which campaign to join. Because who was it? It was Muslim fighting Kafir. Anyone ask you to go to Syria to go and fight in jihad? Bismillah. You have no questions. Go to Iraq to fight, go to Persia to fight. You know exactly who you are fighting. For the first time in the history of Islam, it happens that Muslims are fighting Muslims. You find people, Sahaba on both sides, and confusion reigning. Who is really responsible for what? On the one hand, there are those who suspect that Ali has something to do with the murder of Uthman. On the other hand, there are those who Ali suspects that they are undermining my Khilafah. Suspicion on both sides. Ali takes an army with him to go and subdue Muawiya in Syria. In Makkah, Sayyidina Talha, Sayyidina Zubayr, Sayyida Aisha radiyallahu anha get together in Makkah. They left Medina for Makkah just after the murder of Sayyidina Uthman, knowing that's a place of fitna now. There's fitna has happened in the Ummah. Never before has this happened. And each one is trying to cope with the circumstances as best as he can. They go to Makkah. From Makkah they get news of the fact that two great armies are going to clash with one another. For the first time in Muslim history, Muslim is going to be fighting Muslim. So they march to Basra. On the way to Basra, and their stated purpose is to make sulh, to bring about reconciliation between these two armies of Muslims that are going to fight one another. They march to Basra. They arrive at Basra. Ali comes to know that they have reached Basra. So he turns off his intended route and he goes to Basra because he doesn't know who is this new army. What are they up to? Why are they here? The two armies face one another outside of Basra. And messengers from this side start going to the other side. From that side start going to this side. Now you must understand the extreme confusion that exists. He doesn't know why they are there. They don't know what he is up to. So people go forth from one side to the other. Man, yesterday we knew one another. Everyone was on the same side. How come we are on two different sides? Messengers start going forth from the one side to the other. From the one side to the other. Eventually, they come to a point where they say that tomorrow morning, inshallah, the leaders from both sides will get together and this matter will be solved. There won't be any fighting. The next morning, before we come to the next morning, that night, there was a group of people who was behind all of this all the time. Behind the murder of Sayyidina Uthman radiyallahu anhu. Instigated others to go and commit that murder. And create the dissent that this ummah is experiencing to this very present day. Why were they there? What were they out to do? They were there to destroy the unity of this ummah at that point in time. They realized something. If these two groups get together here, we have failed in our purpose. So they get together that night. Under their leader. And they decide, we have to somehow or the other bring these two parties not to sulh, but we have to make them fight. So they divide in two groups. Half of the group goes to this side, half of the group goes to the other side. This group tomorrow morning will attack that army. That group tomorrow morning will attack this army. Taking advantage of the confusion and the suspicion which is still there in the back of their minds. The next morning people wake up to the clanging of swords. Ali ibn Abi Talib asks, what's happening? We thought we can have sulh. They say, well, the other party attacked us. He said, I knew I couldn't trust them. They wake up in the morning and they ask, what is happening? They say, the other party attacked us. They say, well, we couldn't trust them. The air of suspicion is still there. The suspicion and the confusion still reigns. Sayyidina Talha, Sayyidina Zubayr radiyallahu anhuma. These two men of the Ashara Mubashara. Zubayr is the cousin of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as well. Talha is that person on the day of Uhud, when an arrow came flying directly for the throat of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he stuck out his hand and took the arrow for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to say that there are two kinds of people upon the face of the earth. فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ قَضَى نَحْبَهُ وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَنْتَظِرُ. There are two kinds. There's one person who's still waiting for his martyrdom to come. There's another person who's already received his martyrdom. Those who died at Badr and Uhud, they've already received their martyrdom, and Talha is one of them. He's already received his martyrdom in this earth. Sayyidina Ali himself used to say that when he used to speak about the day of Uhud, he says, ذَلِكَ يَوْمٌ كُلُّهُ لِطَلْحَةٍ. That day was Talha's day, no one else's day. Why? For the way that he saved the holy life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. On that day, Talha finds himself in confusion. He says, this wasn't what I came for. What did I come here for? I came to make sulh between two parties. I'm leaving this battlefield. I'm having nothing to do with it. And he turns around and he walks away. Someone sees him walking away and shoots an arrow at him. And there falls Talha ibn Ubaidillah, the savior of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Zubayr ibn al-Awwam, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam's very, very close companion, about whom he said, لِكُلِّ نَبِيٍّ فِي الْجَنَّةِ حَوَارِي وَحَوَارِيَ فِي الْجَنَّةِ Zubayr ibn al-Awwam. Every Nabi will have a close companion in Jannah. My close companion is this cousin of mine, Zubayr ibn al-Awwam. He leaves the battlefield. He says, this is not what I have come for. This is not what I have come for. Things have. He says that never was there a time in my life when I didn't know what to do, except today. At any given time, I knew exactly what I have to do. But today, I'm absolutely confused. I don't know whether I'm here for the right purpose, for the wrong purpose. And he says, I'm walking away. Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib sees him on the battlefield, and he rides close to him. He says, Zubayr, do you remember one day Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw me and you together, and he asked him, oh Zubayr, do you love your cousin Ali? He says, yes indeed, he's my cousin. He says, a day will come when you will fight him and you'll be the wrong one, oh Zubayr. Zubayr realizes, he recognizes what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said there. I'm leaving this battlefield. He says, on his way away from the battlefield, he is also killed by an enemy soldier. The enemy soldier cuts off his head, brings it to Ali ibn Abi Talib to show him that I've brought you the head of your enemy. He says, Bashir qatil ibn Safiyyah bin nar. Tell the one who's killed the son of Safiyyah, the aunt of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that I'm giving him the glad tidings of Jahannam. To have killed this person is Zubayr. Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib walks through the dead bodies after this very grievous battle has taken place. He sees the dead bodies lying everywhere, and tears flow from his eyes profusely. He comes across the body of the savior of Uhud. He comes across the body of Talha. He turns him around, he looks at the face of Talha, lying, martyred under the sons of Basra. And he says, Azizun alayya Aba Muhammadin an araka mujaddalan tahta as-sama. And his tears flowed like never before. And he cried and cried and cried. This is not what we have come for. My question is, how did all of this happen? Who is behind all of this? Who is that particular group of individuals who sat on that night and plotted, and a few months prior to that had plotted the murder of Uthman radiallahu anhu? Who are those who are responsible for the split in this ummah? There's a person called Abdullah ibn Sabah. وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا Abdullah ibn Sabah. Who is this person called Abdullah ibn Sabah? A Jew from Sana'a in Yemen. Outwardly, ostensibly embraced Islam with the intention of destroying it from the inside. Joined the armies of Ali, before joining the Ali, led a sedition campaign against Uthman, which eventually led to the murder of Uthman radiallahu anhu. Then joined the armies of Ali. And in the armies of Ali, he and his cohorts were the ones who went about telling people various different things. A number of things they used to tell them. To some people they used to go and say, do you know what? Ali is no human. Ali is not a human. Ali is Allah incarnate. He's God incarnate walking on the face of the earth. To another group he used to go and say that Ali is not the fourth of the Khulafa. He is the first of the Khulafa. To him alone should have been the right of being the Khalifa, not to Abu Bakr, not to Umar. The idea of what? Ali's exclusive right to the Khilafah. This person called Abdullah ibn Sabah is the one that used to go about spreading these ideas. Spreading the idea about the wasiyah, says that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam made a wasiyah that Ali must succeed me. For the first time, this was the person responsible for creating a warped version of history. Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib came to know about this person and his activities and called him. Bring him here. He says, what are you telling people, that I am God? He says, yes, that's what I'm telling them. He says, light the fire. If you don't recant, if you don't repent, then we are going to burn you in that fire. Ibn Sabah and his followers say, this proves it that you are Allah. How come does it prove it? Because la yu'adhibu bin nar illa rabbun nar. Only the master, Lord of fire can punish with fire, so you are Allah. And Ali ibn Abi Talib burnt a number of them on that day. Of those others who said Ali is better than Abu Bakr and Umar, he said, bring them here and I will lash them like I would lash any calumniator, any forger of lies. He had to deal with these issues in his lifetime. The fitna of Abdullah ibn Sabah did not die. The fitna of Abdullah ibn Sabah went on and on and on and grew into what we know today as Shiasm. We want to stop here for a moment. The Shia wouldn't be very happy with the version of history that I gave you now. Their version of history was that the Sahaba conspired against Ali from day one. And on the day when the Khilafah was received by Ali, eventually they conspired against him. Ali, or rather Talha, Zubayr, Aisha said, we're going to fight him, we won't let him become the Khalifa. We're going to fight him and won't let him become the Khalifa. And then what about Ibn Sabah? They say Ibn Sabah is a figment of someone's imagination. They say the Ahlus Sunnah, in order to account for the crimes of the Sahaba, they don't want to say that the Sahaba were guilty of all of these terrible things. The Sahaba were guilty of waging war against Ali. They don't want to say that. So what do they say? They created a fictitious person called Abdullah ibn Sabah and they say, he is the man was responsible. This is the man responsible for all this trouble. One of them, one of the contemporary ulama of the Shia, is a person called Murtada al-Askari. He's written a book called Abdullah ibn Sabah and Other Fables. Abdullah ibn Sabah wa Asatir Ukhra. In this book, quite a bulky book, he proves or strives to prove that Abdullah ibn Sabah is a figment of the imagination of the historians of the Ahlul Sunnah who cannot face the fact that the Sahaba were criminals. So they created this person called Abdullah ibn Sabah. What does his research amount to? It amounts to the following. He goes into the books of history. Which book? Specifically, he says, most of the later histories, they draw from the history of Ibn Jarir al-Tabari. So he goes to Ibn Jarir al-Tabari and he looks at all those reports that mention Ibn Sabah. He says, most histories takes from Ibn Jarir. Ibn Jarir in turn takes from another earlier historian called Saif ibn Umar. And this Saif ibn Umar, they say, is an extremely unreliable person. A liar, a zindiq, not a real Muslim, a heretic. And he's the one responsible for creating all this Abdullah ibn Sabah stories. And then they will mention, and this Orientalist and that Orientalist said the same as well. That's a sum total of Murtada al-Askari's research. There are a number of things that we want to say about this particular research. The first thing is that it is very, very selective research. Selective research on two counts. The first count is the fact that it does not represent a full survey of everything that's to be found in history about Abdullah ibn Sabah. If he had to open a book such as Lisanul Mizan of Hafiz ibn Hajar, he will find in there several pages filled with reports about Abdullah ibn Sabah. There's about 11 different reports. Only one of those reports come from Saif ibn Umar. All the others come from other sources. Other sources such as the Tariq Dimashq of Ibn Asakir, such as the Musnad of Abu Ya'la al-Mawsili, such as a number of other sources. The existence of someone called Abdullah ibn Sabah is attested to in much more than just the one little source that he wishes us to believe that Ibn Jarir Tabari has taken from. First point. Second point, what Murtada al-Askari has very, very conveniently overlooked is the fact that forget the history books and the hadith books of the Ahlul Sunnah. Let's go to the history and hadith books of the Shia. The existence of Abdullah ibn Sabah is proven in just about every book on Shia narrators. Abdullah ibn Sabah's existence is testified to by Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, by Imam Muhammad al-Baqir, by Imam Zayn al-Abidin, by Imam Musa al-Kadhim. These Imams whom the Shia believe to be infallible, they attest to it. In the book Ma'rifatul Rijal of Abu Amr al-Kashi, there are several reports that speak about Abdullah ibn Sabah and the kind of things that he did in his lifetime. If Saif ibn Umar and Ibn Jarir al-Tabari, these historians, if they are indeed responsible for creating the legend of Abdullah ibn Sabah, then they must have been extreme geniuses because they managed to fool people who these other people believe to be completely infallible. If the Imams of the Shia themselves admit that Abdullah ibn Sabah existed, I don't think that a conscientious and an honest historian of the Shia has any right to tell us, well, Abdullah ibn Sabah doesn't exist. They have to go back to their own literature before ours and then tell us what do they find in there. And if they are honest, they will admit the existence of a person called Abdullah ibn Sabah. He it is who we believe is the original godfather of this idea that Ali ibn Abi Talib is the only one who has the right to lead the Ummah. That Ali ibn Abi Talib is there on divine appointment by Allah Ta'ala. And going to the extent of saying that Ali ibn Abi Talib is not just any human being, he is Allah incarnate. He is God that walks upon the face of the earth, as much as Isa, Jesus, is God incarnate upon earth. That is the idea which persists up to the present day, but not in this particular branch of Shiasm. As we go further, we will go into the various divisions of Shiasm and see how these various ideas have appropriated themselves and fitted themselves into the various groups of the Shia. Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib radiallahu anhu is eventually martyred in the year 40 after the Hijrah. Now, from this point onwards, we're going to go history of the Imams, one after the other. The Imams, as the Shia have them. First, Ali ibn Abi Talib. We've looked now at his history in the time of Abu Bakr, in the time of Umar, up to his own time, up to his martyrdom. Upon his martyrdom, what happens? His army, those who supported him, the people of Kufa, they elect his son, Sayyidina Hasan ibn Ali, as the next leader. They elect him. When he's lying on his deathbed, they ask him, will you appoint a new leader for us? He says, if Allah wants good for this ummah, He will gather them all upon the one who is best amongst them. He did not appoint any successor. He did not say that Allah has appointed a successor. He left it to his army, to his people himself to elect a leader from amongst themselves, just like Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman previously. So the right to elect a leader comes from where? It arises from within this ummah. It's not by divine appointment, not by any stretch of imagination. Anyway, Hasan ibn Ali becomes the Khalifa thereafter. There was one battle which I did not speak about now. That battle was, after this battle, this grievous battle of the Camel, outside of Basra, the battle of the Jamal, that happened. What Ali did was to send Aisha back to Medina. He sent her back to Medina with the greatest of honor. Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha, for the rest of her life, whenever she used to think about her participation in that particular battle, it was not with pride that she thought about it. She used to cry till her scarf becomes wet with tears, regretting the day that she set out of her house, admitting that she was wrong. She was wrong, she should have stayed in the house, she should not have participated. Who was right? Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib is the Khalifa, he was right. Where does the other side come from though? How do we account for the actions of the other side? First of all, they had no evil intentions. They wanted to create sulh between two parties, because what does Allah Ta'ala say? وَإِن طَائِفَتَانِ مِنَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ اقْتَتَلُوا. What should we do? فَأَصْلِحُوا بَيْنَهُمَا. The reason why they went out there was to make sulh. Who was it that started the war? It was this Ibn Sabah. Thereafter Sayyidina Ali goes, because the problem with Muawiya is still not settled. He goes, and at some point on the Euphrates River, the two armies meet, the army of Ali and the army of Muawiya, and they fight. And another grievous fight it was, in which thousands of lives were lost. If you ask the question who was right and who was wrong, again, without any hesitation, Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib is the rightful ruler. He is the one to whom the Muslims had given their bay'ah. By right, Muawiya should submit to him. But on the other hand, why is Muawiya not submitting to him? Try and understand where he's coming from as well. He's looking for justice for the murder of his cousin. Is he right or is he wrong? He is not right. He's wrong. The Khalifa, his word is law. You have to submit. But we understand why he's doing what he was doing. It was an extremely difficult time. Extremely confusing time. Battle rages between them, without any clear outcome. No clear winner. Eventually, after Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib is murdered, they go back to the city of Kufa. There Hasan ibn Ali is elected as the Khalifa. Again the two armies march at one another. They start marching at one another because this fight is not over. We don't have any clear victor. There Sayyidina Hasan ibn Ali starts thinking in a different line. He says, if these two armies continue hitting at one another, decimating one another, annihilating and destroying one another, who are the only winners? The Romans and the Persians. The Muslims are fighting one another. Up to this point in time, what had been happening? Islam had been spreading and spreading and spreading. For those 5 years of the Khilaf of Sayyidina Ali, there was no spreading because Muslims were engaged with one another. They were fighting one another. In fact, it is said that at that time, when Ali and Muawiya are fighting one another, the emperor of Rome sends a message and he tells Sayyidina Ali, or rather he tells Muawiya. Muawiya is closer to him in Syria. He says, I hear you and your cousin are having a fight. I offer you my services. Muawiya sends a message back. If you enter this territory here. Me and my cousin Ali will gang up against you. Just stay out of it. This is our fight. But still, Islam is not spreading. Hasan ibn Ali recognizes, he realizes the fact that if Muslims continue fighting this fratricidal war, this war between brothers, the only ones to gain will be the enemy. And he realizes there's a way to make peace. What's the way of making peace? Sends a message to Muawiya. Let's not fight any longer. You will destroy my army, I will destroy your army. Who will protect the widows and the children of the Muslims when the Roman army start marching in? Let's come to a conclusion. They decide to come together. They decide that Muawiya will be the ruler. And when he dies, Hasan will become the ruler after him. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had predicted this when Hasan ibn Ali was just a little kid. He took him one day on his lap and he said that, Inna ibni hadha sayyidun. This son of mine, he's a great leader. La asallahu ay yusliha bihi bayna fi'atayn 'azimatayn min al-muslimin. Soon the time will come when Allah Ta'ala will bring about reconciliation between two groups on account of this son of mine. But there was another reason that led Hasan ibn Ali also to realize that the better option is to make peace with Muawiya. When his own army heard that he was going to make peace with Muawiya, they rebelled against him. They ransacked his own tent to the extent that they stabbed him in his leg. And he told them, you know what I've realized now? I've realized that Muawiya is better for me than what you are. You claim to be my army. Muawiya is better for me than you are. At least I have honor. With you I have no honor. When he said that I will make peace with Muawiya, there were people who came to him and said, Assalamu alayka ya mubir al-mu'minin. Not Amir al-mu'minin, you destroyer of the mu'minin. These were the people who thought that they know better even than their Imam, than Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib, his son Hasan ibn Ali. He had problems with these people in his army. His father had similar problems with them not so long before. When he said, let's march, they said, we don't want to march. When he said, make peace, they say, we have a problem with you making peace as well. He had such problems with them. His son Hasan had similar problems with them. Muawiya becomes the ruler. In Muawiya's lifetime, it was agreed, Hasan will become the ruler thereafter. But in Muawiya's lifetime, Hasan ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhuma dies from poisoning. Who's responsible for the poisoning? The fingers start pointing. Who is responsible? It is said that Muawiya is responsible for poisoning him. It is said that Muawiya's son Yazid is responsible for poisoning him. Who is responsible? Let's listen to Hasan himself. His brother Hussein comes to him and says, my dear brother, just tell me who is it. Please just tell me who is it. He says, I'm not going to tell you who it is. If it is who I think it is, then Allah will deal with him. If it's not him, why should an innocent person be killed on my behalf? I have a suspicion. I don't know who it is. Hasan ibn Ali himself didn't know it is. The Shias today know who it is. It was Muawiya and it was Yazid. They were the ones responsible. And how did they manage to do so? They say he had a wife, Hasan had a wife called Ja'da bint al-Ash'af. And they sent a message to her that murder your husband, I'll marry you after that and I'll give you this, that and the other. Now it's easy to accuse a woman long after her death. But if you look at it, Ja'da bint al-Ash'af, if she was really a murderer and a poison and everyone knew about it, you think any man would marry her thereafter? Who's going to marry? Abdullah ibn Abbas married her after Hasan ibn Ali. If she was a murderess, no one would have married her. This is a story, a figment of someone's imagination. With what purpose in mind? Just to say that Muawiya was a bad person. He was the one who was responsible for it. And in this way, people have made up their history. So who is responsible for the poisoning of Sayyidina Hasan? Allah knows who it is. Hasan himself was not prepared to say who it is. Muawiya becomes the ruler. Muawiya rules very peacefully for 20 years. Up to the year 60 after the Hijrah, when he dies. And he makes a very, very bad choice at the end of his life. No excuses for this. He makes a very bad choice. What's his bad choice? He institutes a new practice. My son will become the Khalifa after me. My son Yazid will become the Khalifa after me. Yazid was by no means a good person. There are those historians who would go out of their way to try and show that no, Yazid was a good person. As far as I'm concerned, such excuses do not cut any ice. Yazid was not a good person. Especially not when compared to the likes of Hussein ibn Ali, when compared to Abdullah ibn Zubayr, Abdullah ibn Umar, those sons of the Sahaba. Yazid doesn't even come close to the dust of those persons there. What Muawiya did was by no means right. He dies, he leaves his son, Yazid. Yazid was not a good person. And therefore, Sayyidina al-Hussein ibn Ali feels that the time has come for revolution. We have to get rid. Rebellion against this fasiq ruler, this irreligious person. We cannot have. Muawiya we could still have. He was okay. This one here we cannot have. But Hussein ibn Ali cannot rebel on his own. He needs supporters. So he's sitting in Makkah. And letters start arriving at his residence where he's staying in Makkah. Letters from where? Letters from the city of Kufa. This is the year 61 after the Hijrah. Letters come from Kufa and people tell him, Hussein, come to us. We will support you against this person. He's unsure at first whether to go, whether not to go. He sends his cousin Muslim ibn Aqil to the city of Kufa to find out, is everything okay? Muslim ibn Aqil goes to Kufa. He enters the city, starts speaking to the ringleaders. They all tell him, no problem, tell Hussein to come. Hussein sets out from Makkah with his family, with his brothers, Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman, and his own sons, Umar and Uthman. All of them are together with him. They're traveling. Where to? To Kufa. For what purpose? To establish proper Islamic justice, not the justice of Yazid. On the way to Kufa, while they're on their way, word gets out that Hussein is on his way to Kufa. Yazid hears about it and he sends Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad to Kufa as the new governor and say, get hold of the situation there. Get control of the situation because Kufa is slipping out of our grip. Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad marches into Kufa with his face closed. The people of Kufa think, mashallah, Hussein has come. This is not Hussein. This is the one who was sent to take control of the situation, to stop Hussein from coming to Kufa. When the people of Kufa, when the Shia of Kufa realize that this is not Hussein who has come, that their game is out, that they have been discovered, what do? They all turn back on their heels. Thousands of them had sent letters to Hussein and say, come and we'll support you. When Hussein arrived at a place called Karbala, none of them were there to support him. Hussein arrives at Karbala, there's no one there to support him. Those thousands of people of Kufa, he said, come, not a single one of them is there to support him. And as we will discover, inshallah, within the next few weeks, he meets with the governor of this army sent out to stop him. He says, give me one of three options. Allow me to go back to Medina, or allow me to go to Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, or to Yazid rather, or allow me to go to the borders where the enemies are and I'll make jihad for the rest of my life. They say, no, we will fight you. And they fight him. And this old man, grandson of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Rayhanatu Rasulillahi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and his children around him are cut down one after the other until only Hussein stands. And Hussein too is attacked. And Hussein too is beheaded. And Hussein's blood is shed on the sands of Karbala. Who is responsible? Within a few weeks' time, go to the Ahlul Bayt Foundation and you will discover who is responsible. Shimr is responsible. Yazid is responsible. Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad is responsible. Abu Bakr and Umar are responsible for death. But there's one other party who no one wants to point a finger at. Those Shia of Kufa who called their Imam. And they told their Imam, come, we'll support you. And when the moment was there, they were not there for him. When the moment came, they were not there for him. Then they became very, very docile and obedient subjects of the Umayyad ruler Yazid. When Hussein's life was in danger, they were not there to support him. Karbala was a tragedy. Karbala was a crime against the holy blood of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Who is responsible for it? That Umayyad ruler. Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad is responsible. Yazid is responsible. But the Shia of Kufa are equally responsible. On account of them, the holy blood of Hussein was shed on that day. 1 year later, they come together. Now they've become very, very, very sorry. They regret what they have done. 1 year later they come together and they start on an expedition and say, we'll take revenge for the killing of Hussein. They come together at the spot called Karbala. And that entire night they spend crying. They cry and they wail and they lament. Why are they crying? Why are they wailing? Why are they lamenting? Because they admit their own complicity in the murder of Hussein. The very, very first Ashura celebration of the Shia, commemoration of the killing of Hussein, was one in which they admitted their own guilt. Today, the finger of guilt is pointed at everyone but themselves. That finger of guilt gets pointed at Yazid, it gets pointed at Ubaidullah ibn Ziyad, it gets pointed at Umar ibn Sa'd, it gets pointed at Abu Bakr, Umar and Uthman, it gets pointed at everyone but the Shia themselves. It was not their first betrayal of the Ahlul Bayt, it most certainly wouldn't be their last. They betrayed Ali ibn Abi Talib, they betrayed his son Hasan, they betrayed his son Hussein. Not very long thereafter they would betray others as well. After this, those who claim to be followers of the Ahlul Bayt, they divide amongst themselves. Those who claim to be the followers of the Ahlul Bayt, they divide amongst themselves. Some of them say, Ali has another son. We will follow him. Their poet is one called As-Sayyid Al-Himyari. He says, أَلَا إِنَّ الْأَئِمَّةَ مِنْ قُرَيْشٍ وُلَاةُ الْحَقِّ أَرْبَعَةٌ سَوَاءُ. He says, the true rightful rulers from Quraysh are only four. Who are those? First of all is Ali. And after Ali who? فَسِبْتٌ سِبْتُ إِيمَانٍ وَصِدْقٍ وَسِبْتٌ غَيَّبَتْهُ كَرْبَلَاءُ. The first two, Hassan ibn Ali, and then Hussein ibn Ali, who was killed at Karbala. And then who's the third one? وَسِبْتُ لَا يَذُوقُ الْمَوْتَ حَتَّى يَقُودَ الْخَيْلَ يَقْدُمُهُ اللِّوَاءُ. There's another third son. He'll never taste of death. He won't taste of death. He'll remain alive for a long time. He'll remain alive for a long time until eventually he comes back. That was Ali's other son, Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah. They said, Hassan is gone, Hussein is gone, Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah won't die. What will happen to him? تَغَيَّبَ لَا يُرَى فِيهِمْ زَمَانًا. He's gone into ghaiba, he's gone into occultation. Where has he gone into occultation? Occultation means you cannot see him. He's somewhere out of this world, in another dimension. تَغَيَّبَ لَا يُرَى فِيهِمْ زَمَانًا بِرَضْوَى عِنْدَهُ عَسَلٌ وَمَاءٌ. He's staying at a place called Radwa. That's a mountain. There he is being fed with water and honey, and he's waiting till the time is right, and then he will come back. At that time, the Shia only had 4 Imams. Not 12. 4 Imams. Ali, Hassan, Hussein, and then the bulk of them said, we're waiting, Muhammad ibn al-Hanafiyyah is the next Imam. When he died, they say he didn't die, he's coming back. When he never came back, then they said, no, the real Imam is not him, it's the son of Hussein. It is Ali Zainul Abidin. Ali Zainul Abidin was the only male survivor of the massacre of Karbala. He spent the rest of his life as a pious, ascetic scholar, alim in Medina, spreading ilm, helping the poor, upholding the legacy of his grandfather, never lifting a sword against anyone. He died in the year 95 after the Hijrah, without ever having attempted another insurrection, not against the rulers of the time, against no one. He lived a life of seclusion, withdrawal. There were Shia who claimed to act in his name. At that time there was a chap going around who called himself Mukhtar ibn Abi Ubaid al-Thaqafi. This person claimed to be a Nabi. He says, I'm the Nabi, and the Rabb who has sent me, the Allah who has sent me, is Ali ibn Hussein Zainul Abidin. He was killed. In history, he did not survive. But he started something. He's left an imprint on history. At that time when he was going around, his claim was, we are going to take revenge on the killers of Hussein. So he gathered an army, and he hunted them down wherever he could find them. And he engaged in warfare with the Umayyads. And he used to tell his soldiers before the time that Allah, that he is Rabb now, Ali ibn al-Hussein, falsely claiming so, of course. He says, he's informed me that we're going to win this battle. And then they lose the battle. When they lose the battle, then he says, Bada lillah. Allah changed his mind. Allah wanted us to win, but since we've lost, now we've changed. Now, this year, I know that it's somewhat ludicrous, but intended to tell you something. It's intended to tell you that this is how Shiasm emerged in history. If you go today, the Shia up today believe in this concept of Bada. This concept of Bada, which basically means I didn't know and then I realized. Applying such a term to Allah Ta'ala, they rehabilitated the term afterwards. But this is where the origins of it come from. It arises out of Mukhtar ibn Abi Ubaid, who lost wars when he was supposed to have won them. And since he couldn't be wrong, he said, Allah is wrong. Allah made a mistake. Na'udhu billah. Anyway, life goes on. So Zainul Abidin passes away in the year 95 after the Hijrah. The Shia now claim the Imam after him is his son, Muhammad al-Baqir. Muhammad al-Baqir, a great alim of Medina, a great scholar, a most pious person, equipped with all the right qualities. If he wanted to be the Khalifa, he had all the right qualities. He did not have the right followers though. There were people who claimed, yes, we are your people. You come and we will support you. He used to say, knowing the bitter experience of his forefather Sayyidina al-Hussein, he said, أصبحنا وليس أحد أعدى لنا ممن ينتحل مودتنا. Today the day is such that we have no worse enemy than those people who claim to love us. They've sat back on their couches all and said, we are the lovers of the family of Muhammad. These are the greatest enemies of the family of Muhammad. When the family of Muhammad needed them, they were not there. So he lived a life of withdrawal in Medina. He did not engage in any warfare. He engaged in what? In teaching ilm. Narrating the ahadith which he had heard from his grandfather, from his father, from his grandfather. Also narrating the ahadith which he heard from another teacher of his. Who is that other teacher? Jabir ibn Abdullah, the great Sahabi. Those ahadith can be found in Bukhari and Muslim and everywhere else. These members of the household of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam narrated from all the Sahaba radiallahu anhu that they knew. Not only from their own line. They never thought of themselves as people who have a claim alone to haqq. Zainul Abidin, his father, used to say, and I mentioned this in a previous lecture, he says, Ya ayyuhan nas ahibbuna hubbal Islam. People, if you're going to love us as Muslims. فَوَاللَّهِ مَا زَالَ بِنَا حُبُّكُمْ حَتَّى أَصْبَحَ عَلَيْنَا عَارًا. Your love has reached such a level that it's become a spot on our face. It's become a mark on our honor. Because of what you people are believing about us, people think we're actually teaching people that we are gods, and that we are higher than prophets, and that we have the ilm of the ghaib, and all of these things. So don't say these things about us, he tells them. Love us the way Islam says you must love us. Nothing more, nothing less. The Ahlul Bayt living in Medina had to deal with the problem of people far apart. Which people? The descendants, the intellectual descendants of Abdullah ibn Sabah, who made up ideas of their own and ascribed it to the Ahlul Bayt, the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam are free from any such associations. One member of this family, Zayd ibn Ali, the brother of Muhammad al-Baqir, the younger brother, the first one to start traveling of the Ahlul Bayt. He travels, he comes to Kufa and he finds what people are saying. He says, my father brought me up. He never taught me these things. And I think this must be the third time that I'm repeating the story. They tell him that the reason your father did not teach you these things was because he knew you would reject them if he had taught you. So he rather didn't teach you. So at the day of Qiyamah he can say, well, my son didn't know. The Ahlul Bayt never knew about these things that people were saying about them. So whose religion is this? Is this the religion of the Ahlul Bayt? Or is this the religion of those who claim to be the followers of the Ahlul Bayt? Muhammad al-Baqir dies in the year 114 after the Hijrah. The Shia split amongst themselves. Some Shia say Muhammad al-Baqir is not dead, he will come back. Some says, let's be honest, let's be realistic, he's died. Who's the next Imam? They say the next Imam is his son, Ja'far al-Sadiq. Ja'far al-Sadiq lives his life in Medina, never traveling out except for Hajj to Makkah, never going to Kufa, never going to all of those places, living in Medina the life that his father had lived before him. A life of seclusion, a life of ibadah, a life of engaging in ilm, a life of supporting the poor and doing good works. And the Shia, they come from time to time, from their cities where they live, pass through Medina, go back and tell stories about the Imam. And we've seen the stories that they tell. The hallmark of fabrication is very, very clear. Abu Ja'far al-Tusi says, the ahadith are so contradictory that you cannot find a single hadith that is not contradicted by another. This is the legacy that they ascribe to the Ahlul Bayt. Ja'far al-Sadiq dies in the year 148 after the Hijrah. The Shia are in major consternation. Why major consternation? Because up to now they had this in mind, that the eldest son of the Imam is the next Imam. The eldest son of the Imam must be the next Imam. Al-imamatu fil akbari min waladil Imam. The problem is the eldest of Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq's son, the eldest of his sons was someone called Ismail. And the problem is that Ismail died in his father's lifetime. His father was alive when the son dies. So the question comes up, now when the father dies, who becomes the Imam? The Shia are split into various different groupings. Which groupings do they split into? First, there is a group that claims that the Imamah is in the next eldest one, Abdullah al-Aftah. That group is called the Fathiyah. Then there is another group that says, no, his son Muhammad, he is the right Imam. Then there's another group, they say, no, his son Zakaria is the right Imam. And then there's another group that says, jump Muhammad, jump all the other ones, right to the youngest one, his name is Musa al-Kadhim, he is the new Imam. Now, if this was a clear-cut matter about who the Imam is supposed to be, would there be this kind of confusion? To add to the confusion, there's another group that says, Ja'far al-Sadiq didn't die. He made like he died, but he'll come back at the end of time again. Wholesale confusion. Most of the Shia at that moment in time follow the line of Abdullah al-Aftah. Most of them are of the Fathiyya. They follow that particular line. Eventually the line that will dominate will not be that line, but it will be the line that follows the younger son or attach themselves to the Imam of the younger son, Musa al-Kadhim. Now here I want to stop for a moment. I want to go back to an earlier one. When Zayd ibn Ali came out to Kufa, then he led a rebellion against the Umayyads. He was warned, don't trust the people of Kufa. They betrayed your grandfather. They betrayed your great-grandfather. They'll betray you as well. He says, but they've given me their bay'ah. 40,000 of them had given me their bay'ah. He's warned, do not trust these people. Just before the battle starts, what does he ask them? As we have seen last week, one little question. What do you say about Abu Bakr and Umar? Where does such a question originate? From Ali ibn Abi Talib? Did he teach his children this? Well, he named his own son Abu Bakr. He named his own son Umar. He wouldn't go about testing people's iman by asking them, what do you believe about Abu Bakr and Umar? Because to him it's very clear. Umar is his son-in-law. Abu Bakr is the one after whom he named his own son. Something has happened. Whose influence is that? By now you would know the answer to whose influence is that. That is Abdullah ibn Sabah. There's Abdullah ibn Sabah who taught people that there's a rift between the Ahlul Bayt on the one side and the Sahaba on the other. So if you want to see if someone is on the path of the Shia, just asking this question, what do you believe about Abu Bakr and Umar? Zayd ibn Ali was as honest a person as ever walked this earth. He says, كَانَ وَزِيرَيْ جَدِّي فَأَتَوَلَّاهُمَا وَلَا أَتَبَرَّأُ مِنْهُمَا وَلَا أَعْلَمُ أَحَدًا مِنْ أَهْلِ بَيْتِي إِلَّا وَهُوَ يَتَوَلَّاهُمَا. He says, these are the two ministers of my grandfather, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. I have nothing but good to say about them. I have no bad word, and not a single member of my family has anything bad to say about them. The response is what? They say, Zayd, can you be an imam? When you think good of Abu Bakr and Umar, you cannot be an imam. 40,000 people had given their bay'ah. That 40,000 depart at the drop of a hat. So you're not our imam. How can our imam be someone who says something good about Abu Bakr and Umar? Zayd ibn Ali says, أَرَاهُمْ وَاللَّهِ قَدْ فَعَلُوهَا حُسَيْنِيَّةً. They have done with me as they have done with Hussein. So he says, اِذْهَبُوا فَأَنْتُمُ الرَّافِضَةِ. Go away, you are the rejectors, you are the Rafidah. The Rafidah is another name that's applied to the Shia in history. From that moment onwards. The line of Zayd ibn Ali ibn al-Hussein continues. That's a separate sect of the Shia existing up to the present day. You will find them in Yemen. If you've been following the news, you would have heard of the Shia insurrection in Yemen. You might have heard of the Houthis, a group in Yemen wanting to bring back the rule of the Zaydi Imams of Yemen. That's one sect of Shia. They continue up to the present day. They ruled Yemen up to the 1950s. And then there was a revolution. And the army took over. And the last Imam of Yemen had to flee to Britain. Right now at this moment there's a group attaching themselves to the leadership of Badruddin al-Houthi and his son Hussein, both of whom have died already. They are clamoring and they are demanding the return of the Zaydi Imam to Yemen. Yemen must be ruled by a Zaydi Imam. Now there are certain facts that you need to know. We're getting carried away. I thought we'll be able to cover all of this. Master of Ceremony says, time. Anyway, a few more moments. I want to bring into the picture of this particular group of Shia in Yemen. This group of Shia, what do they believe? They believe as follows, that Abu Bakr and Umar were good persons. Some of them are not too good about Uthman radiallahu anhu. They say Abu Bakr and Umar are good persons. And the Imam, they say the Imam is not automatically by Allah's appointment. And Imam only becomes an Imam if he comes forward with a da'wah. You must come forward with a cause, with a political cause. You must establish Allah's law. That's how you become an imam. You don't become an imam just because you are the son of an imam. You must do something to prove your imamah. That's the Zaydi belief. It is said that the Zaydis are the closest of all the various groupings of the Shia to the Ahlul Sunnah. There's truth in the statement, and there's some untruth in it as well. That's because we cannot generalize. For the Zaydis, there are three different groups of Zaydis. In history, there were three groups. The one is called the Sulaymaniya. The other one is called the Batriya. And the last one is called the Jarudiya. The Jarudiya have every bit as caustic, injurious statements to make about the Sahaba as the other Shia have. They are the ones that have continued. The Zaydis in Yemen are not the Zaydis of the textbooks. The Zaydis of Yemen are as vehemently opposed to many of those figures of the Sahaba as the Ithna-Ash, the 12 Shia of Iran and elsewhere are. So while it is true that amongst the Zaydis there are those who are very close to the Ahlul Sunnah, it is also true that there are those who are as far away from the Ahlul Sunnah as the Ithna-Ash, as the mainstream Shia are. We take cognizance of that fact. The Zaydis are what? They are a branch of the Shia. They follow the line of Zayd ibn Ali, but to them imamah is not by inheritance, imamah is by work. You have to come forward and do something for it. As for the attitudes towards the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, some of them are good, some of them are not so good towards the Sahaba. The line that has continued of the Zaydis happens to be the Jarudi one, the one that's not so good. Amongst the scholars, many have come across and become of the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, like Muhammad ibn Ibrahim al-Wazir, like Muhammad ibn Ismail al-San'ani, the author of Subul al-Salam, like Muhammad ibn Ali al-Shawkani, the author of Nailul Awtar. These were all people who came from a Zaydi background, and they came over to the side of the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah because of the close relationship that there does exist between them. We jump from there very quickly. We leave Zayd ibn Ali and the Zaydis of Yemen behind. Two other sects of the Shia that only I want you to look at. After Ja'far al-Sadiq, there's whole-scale confusion. Remember who the original Imam was supposed to be? Ismail. But Ismail died. So once again that statement of Bada appears. Which statement? Ismail was supposed to be the Imam, but Allah didn't know that Ismail was going to die. Now Ismail has died, therefore the next person, Musa al-Kadhim, will have to become the other Imam. So the Musa al-Kadhim line will continue. The Ismail line will continue as well. The Ismail line continues up to the present day. Up to the present day. Those people, they drop out of circulation for a while. After about 200 years, they pitch up again in North Africa, in Tunisia, in a place called Al-Mahdiya. There a person called Ubaidullah al-Mahdi establishes a new state. A new state. That state in North Africa eventually overruns all of North Africa, including Egypt. They are the Fatimids of Egypt. They are the ones who built modern Cairo as we know it. They are the builders of Al-Azhar. For 250 years they continued ruling in that part of the world until eventually Salahuddin al-Ayyubi removed them from there. They continue up to the present day in two groups of the Shia. The one is called the Agha Khani group. You might have heard about a person called Karim Agha Khan. He claims to be the 49th direct Imam from that line. This line of Agha Khan, they still have that original belief that the Imam is a walking God on the face of this earth. Their Imam Agha Khan is believed to be what? A walking God incarnate. If he says make salah, they make salah. If he says don't make salah, don't fast, don't do anything, drink wine, eat pork, eat riba, then they do, because he is God. There's no Quran, there's no Sunnah, there's only that particular Imam. That's the one group of them. The other group is called the Bohras. You'll find them in East Africa, you'll find them in India, Pakistan. They wear a very, very distinct kind of dress, knee-length white clothing with a very distinctive kind of kufia on their heads as well. Their Imam, their last Imam disappeared somewhere in history. He's called At-Tayyib ibn al-Amir. A little child of 5 years old disappeared. They are waiting for him to come back. In the meantime, they have a line of representatives called the Da'i Mutlaq or the Da'i Du'at. The present Da'i, the 41st Da'i, I think he is called Burhanuddin. They will call him Sayyidina Burhanuddin, based in the city of Baroda in India. He is the one that they defer to. They are called the Bohras. So of this line, the Ismaili line, they exist in the world up to today. The one is definitely out of the fold of Islam. Those who claim that the Agha Khan is a God incarnate, they're out of the fold of Islam. Who says so? We the Sunnis say so. Our Iranian friends concur. Even they feel it's right to say that some Shias are out of the fold of Islam. And they do not feel any compunctions of saying, well, the sake of unity. No, because if you cross certain lines, you're out of the fold of Islam. The other group, the Bohras, who still exist in some part of the world, because it's so difficult to determine what they really believe, Therefore, we suspend judgment on them. They exist, but they're a small group. They don't have a country of 40, 50, 60 million people like the other Iranian Shia have. Therefore, we don't pay too much attention to them. The Iranian Shia have a country. They have a presence all over the areas which they do inhabit, and their Imamah continues in this particular line. Musa al-Kadhim. After Musa al-Kadhim, they go on to the next Imam, Ali al-Rida. I just want to point out something. Ali Rida dies in the year 203 after the Hijrah. In the year 203, the year after he dies, someone else will die. Someone else will die in the year 204. That person is Sayyidina al-Imam Muhammad ibn Idris al-Shafi'i. Just a comparison very quickly. Imam Shafi'i rahmatullahi alayhi dies at the age of 54. He leaves behind a legacy. He's built a madhab of fiqh. He's laid down the ground rules of usul, and you can still find his works in extant right up to the present day. His madhab continues, uninterrupted. The very first copy of the Risala that he wrote, that was written in the handwriting of his student Rabi ibn Sulaiman, is still extant in the world up to today. Where's the legacy of Imam Shafi'i? Alive and kicking. On the other hand, Imam Ali Rida, that the Shia claim is their 7th, 8th Imam. They claim that this is the Imam and he is the one whose position is higher than that of the Anbiya alayhimus salatu wassalam. And his knowledge is directly from Allah and all of these things. Our question is, what legacy did he personally leave? Not much of a legacy. Where are his books? With all due respect to these figures of the Ahlul Bayt, we love and respect them. They are the family. In their veins flows the blood of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But greatness in this ummah is not by blood. Greatness in this ummah is to whom Allah bestows it. Having the honor of the blood of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in your veins is a major honor. And we will continue to respect and honor that descendant of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But ilm Allah gives to whoever He wishes. He gave it to Ata ibn Abi Rabah, black slave of Makkah, whose hair was like peppercorns, and he's the Mufti of Makkah. He's not from Quraysh. He's not even an Arab. He gave to Abu Hanifa an-Nu'man, that Persian whose grandfather entered Islam. He gave it to Allah. Gives ilm wherever He wishes. Those who contributed towards this ummah, to the greatest of the ummah, did not have to belong to any particular bloodline. They belong to all colors, all races, all families. So with all due respect to the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we find that those who have contributed to the greatness of this ummah and to the preservation of the legacy of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam were often not of the Ahlul Bayt. Why? Because Allah gives greatness where He wants to. I'm going to jump very, very quickly. There's a few very, very interesting things that I wanted to say in between, but in consideration of the time, the last Imam dies in the year 260. The 11th Imam dies in the year 260. He dies without leaving a child. So there were only 11 Imams in that line, not 12 as people would claim. The 12 is a figment of someone's imagination, as I have wanted to say tonight, but my time is too short. I just want to make one little comparison. He dies in the year what? 260 after the Hijrah. That's Hasan al-Askari. Before him, his father died in the year 254. 254-55. Ali al-Hadi died at that time. Who also dies at the same time? 256 after the Hijrah, dies a person called Muhammad ibn Ismail al-Bukhari. 261 after the Hijrah dies his student Muslim ibn Hajjaj al-Qushayri. These two men, these two great alims, they went into the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They studied it, they devoted their lives to it, till eventually they brought about these two great books, Al-Bukhari and Muslim, a gift to this ummah, the highest level of historical authenticity ever recorded. The highest level. Who are these? Not of the Ahlul Bayt. And when we ask that we love and respect the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam deeply, but in terms of contribution, we have to say that what was left to us by Bukhari, what was left to us by Muslim, has been more valuable to us than the legacy of these two particular Imams, with all due respect. When we look at what the Shia have, you would expect the Shia have the ahadith of these Imams amongst them. You would expect that they have it amongst them. You expect that when they narrate hadith, they narrate from the 11th Imam, from the 10th Imam. No, they don't. They narrate from a whole lot of spurious figures on the side. From this one and that one and that one, from Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq. Not from Imam Jafar as-Sadiq's son, not from his son, not from his son. From who? From a whole lot of people on the side. Our question is, whose legacy is this? Is this the legacy of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam? Or is this the legacy of those particular persons who for their own interests, for their own purposes, fabricated a legacy, ascribed it to the holy and noble family of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and say that this is the legacy of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, this is proper deen and everything else is a corruption. Next week inshallah, there's still much detail. 1 hour was not sufficient. I had to skim over some of this detail. Not sufficient. I had to skim over some of this detail.